The church was filled with the scent of expensive lilies and polished wood. The kind of place where grief was dressed in designer black and tears came only when someone was watching. I stood near the back, hands folded, feeling like a guest at my own goodbye. My billionaire grandfather lay in a closed casket at the front, the man who had raised me in quiet moments, who taught me chess, patience, and how to read people without speaking. Now he was gone, and the silence he left behind felt heavier than the fortune everyone had come for. My relatives filled the front rows. My uncles whispered behind cupped hands. My aunts dabbed their eyes, careful not to smudge their makeup. My cousins sat stiffly, pretending to mourn while already calculating what their inheritance would buy. They hadn't visited my grandfather in years, but death had a way of reminding people of money. When the lawyer finally stood to read the will, the room leaned forward as if pulled by a string. One by one, names were called. Companies, mansions, stock portfolios, offshore accounts. Each announcement was met with quiet gasps and polite nods, grief slowly turning into satisfaction. I watched smiles flicker and disappear, replaced by practiced solemnity. Then the lawyer paused. He looked up, his eyes settling on me, to my granddaughter. He said carefully, "I leave one plane ticket, one way." For a second the room was silent, then someone laughed, not loudly, but enough. A sharp, mocking sound that sliced straight through my chest. Heat rushed to my face as heads turned toward me, some with pity, others with amusement. One plain ticket, that was all. No explanation, no goodbye. My hands trembled as I accepted the envelope. I wanted to scream, to ask why, to demand how love could be reduced to something so small, but the words stayed trapped in my throat. As the service ended, my family gathered in clusters, already celebrating. No one came to me, no one asked if I was okay. I slipped out of the church unnoticed, the sound of their laughter echoing behind me. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. I stared at the envelope in my hands, my heart aching with betrayal. In that moment, I believed I had lost everything. My grandfather, my place, and my worth. I didn't yet know that this was only the beginning. I stared at the plane ticket for 3 days before I finally used it. It sat on my kitchen table like an accusation, mocking me every time I passed. A one-way ticket to a coastal city I had never heard of. No note, no explanation. Just another reminder that at the funeral I had been worth less than everyone else. Part of me wanted to tear it in half. Another part of me, the part my grandfather had quietly shaped, refused to ignore it. He had never been careless. If he had given me this, it meant something, even if I couldn't yet understand what. The airport felt colder than usual. As I boarded the plane, surrounded by strangers scrolling through their phones and sipping overpriced coffee, the weight of everything I had lost pressed down on my chest. I cried silently as the plane lifted off, watching the city shrink beneath the clouds. I wasn't just leaving a place. I was leaving a family that had never truly claimed me. Hours passed in a blur of turbulence and memories. I thought about the nights my grandfather would sit with me on the balcony, telling me that money reveals who people are, but freedom shows who you are meant to become. At the time, I thought it was just another lesson. Now it felt like a goodbye. When the plane landed, the air smelled of salt and wind. The airport was small, quiet, almost forgotten by the world. Just beyond the exit doors, a man in a black suit stood holding a card with my name written neatly across it. He smiled, not warmly, but respectfully. Without saying much, he led me to a car and drove along the coastline until we reached a private hangar overlooking the sea. My heart began to race, confusion mixing with a strange sense of dread. Then I saw it, a jet gleaming white under the sun, its presence calm and powerful. Painted near the door in elegant lettering was my name. My breath caught, and my legs felt weak beneath me. The man handed me a small envelope. "Your grandfather asked me to give you this once you arrived," he said. Inside was a single piece of paper, 6 words, written in the handwriting I knew better than my own thoughts. "They took money, you take freedom." The tears came fast and uncontrollable. In that moment, the humiliation of the funeral cracked open, revealing the truth beneath it. The plane ticket hadn't been a dismissal, it had been an invitation to leave everything behind. The man introduced himself as Daniel, though he spoke my grandfather's name with the ease of someone who had known him longer than I had been alive. He didn't rush me when I cried. He waited, standing beside the jet as if this moment had been planned down to the second. Inside a quiet office overlooking the hangar, Daniel laid out a stack of documents on a polished table. Contracts, bank statements, trust papers. At the center was a single folder with my name printed on it. My hand shook as I opened it. "This is yours," he said simply, "everything your grandfather wanted you to have." Over the next few hours, the truth unfolded like a story no one else had been allowed to read. The companies my family celebrated at the funeral were drowning in debt. Years of reckless expansion, hidden loans, and quiet lawsuits had hollowed them from the inside. My grandfather had spent his final years trying to stabilize the damage, but he knew the collapse was coming. He didn't want to save them, Daniel explained. He wanted to save you. The jet, I learned, was fully paid for, registered under a private trust that could not be touched by the rest of the estate. Along with it came clean accounts, modest compared to the billions my relatives fought over, but enough to live freely without fear or obligation. No board meetings, no shareholders, no family control. As days passed, news began to break. Stock prices fell overnight. Investigations were announced. My uncle's confident smile appeared on television, strained and desperate. Lawsuits surfaced, then arrests. The same relatives who had laughed at me now faced cameras with panic in their eyes. My phone began to ring. Calls I didn't answer. Messages filled with sudden love, regret, and excuses. They said they missed me. They said they were family. I read none of it past the first line. From the jet's window, I watched cities pass beneath me like distant memories. I felt no joy in their downfall, only a calm understanding of my grandfather's final lesson. Revenge didn't have to be loud. It didn't need anger or cruelty. The sweetest revenge was absence. They had taken what looked like everything: power, money, control. But those things came with chains they couldn't see. I had been given the truth, the sky, and the freedom to walk away. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly why my grandfather had chosen me. Years passed more quietly than I ever imagined. I stopped counting time in money and milestones and began measuring it in mornings without fear and nights without regret. The jet became less a symbol of wealth and more a reminder of choice. I used it when I needed to, but I learned just as much from staying still, from building a life that felt honest and my own. I settled near the ocean, in a place where no one cared about my last name. I worked under my own name, not as an heir, but as a person. I invested carefully, helped quietly, and walked away from anything that felt like a cage. My grandfather's lessons stayed with me in every decision. Never trade freedom for approval. News of my family reached me only in fragments. The empire they had fought over fractured under pressure. Former allies testified against each other. Properties were seized. The headlines spoke of betrayal, fraud, and greed. The same people who once looked down on me were now shadows of their former selves, trapped in courtrooms instead of boardrooms. They tried to reach me again, handwritten letters, apologies that arrived too late, promises that sounded empty even on paper. I didn't hate them. Hate would have kept me tied to their world. Instead, I let them go, the way my grandfather had taught me to release what no longer served me. One evening, I stood on a cliff above the sea, the jet resting behind me as the sun dipped into the horizon. I thought about that day in the church, about the laughter and the shame I carried out with me. I smiled, not because I had one, but because I had survived without becoming like them. My grandfather didn't leave me billions, and I finally understood why. He left me a future that didn't depend on anyone's permission. A life built on movement, choice, and quiet strength. They inherited the money, I inherited the sky, and in that difference I found peace, purpose, and the sweetest